with Sonia Hooper, Executive Director of Early Childhood Development Association, helping families make the early years count. Good morning to you, Sonia Hooper.
Good morning.
We're talking about setting limits today. Now, Sonia, first question, how do you set limits with children?
Well, the hardest part of setting limits really is sticking to them. The goal is setting a rule, if you will, that's intended to establish a specific behavior that you're wanting. Children do need boundaries, and consistent application of those limits are certainly what works best.
So what do we do, or families do, Sonia, if a child is displaying, let's say, undesirable behavior?
Being consistent is so important. Once you set the rules, try and stick to them. But when the undesirable behaviors happen, comment on the behavior rather than the child's character or making comparisons. The idea is to nurture their confidence and develop a positive self-esteem while encouraging self-regulation or self-control. So, for instance, if a child's interrupting, ask them to please wait their turn rather than sort of pointing out that they're being rude. Redirecting is another great tool as well. For a child jumping on the couch, for instance, ask them to come with you outside to jump in puddles, perhaps, teaching the child an appropriate use for the skill they are developing.
And how do families determine the consequence for undesirable behaviors?
Well, this can be a difficult one for sure. It's really important to be reasonable. If the consequence is too lenient, it might not be taken seriously. And if it's too severe, it could result in the child developing resentment. The consequence has to make sense, and you have to be able to follow through. So, for example, if you're visiting at Nanny's for dinner and your child is jumping on the couch while watching TV, and you've asked them to stop jumping and they haven't responded, it's probably not reasonable to say, stop or we're going home. Rather, redirecting or taking away a privilege maybe of watching TV might be more doable and in line with that situation.
So, Sonia, what would you say is the most important consideration in setting limits with a child?
Well, consistency certainly is the most, but when a situation is over, let it be over. There's no need to rehash again and again. Be reasonable for the child's age and be loving by being consistent. Be fair and always be kind. You're giving your child the gift of confidence and pride and a feeling of security when you love your children unconditionally and respect them as people.
How do we get a hold of you, Sonia?
earlychildhooddevelopment.ca or follow us on Twitter at ECDA of PEI.
All right, we're helping families make the early years count.